And I'll tell you what the technique is, just so that people and some of your listeners can begin to practice it. Because what lucid dreaming showed me was you have to look at the energy of your own thinking, your own beliefs, expectation, focus, and intent. All that becomes incredibly clear in the lucid dream state.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I have someone who's been exploring, becoming an expert in creating other people's realities by determining what is going on in this state that we call lucid dreaming. Welcome to the podcast, Robert Waggoner. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I'm very, very excited. Why don't you just fill the audience in a little bit in the backstory and how you got to this point right now?
Right. So I've written 2 books on lucid dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, and Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple. They've been translated into 8 languages. But for myself, I taught myself a simple technique to become lucidly aware back in 1975, and this was 5 years before the scientific evidence emerged that lucid dreaming was a valid field of scientific study. And so since that time, I've had more than 1,000 lucid dreams. I've really explored it deeply. And in my books, what I'm trying to do is expand the potential so people see that there's more involved in lucid dreaming than just flying around and having fun and dancing on the ceiling and that kind of thing, that you can really accomplish extraordinary things, as well as get new insight into the nature of reality. And so that's what I'm all about, and go around the world giving workshops, do them online, and just have a lot of fun with it.
Wow, it's so interesting. We're sort of entering or exiting a threshold of this sort of like definition of consciousness, probably that's evolved over human mankind defining what language actually means. But I mean, let's just say in the last 50 years within our consciousness in of itself has turned into something that's a very hot topic. And so this is like another way to acquire this consciousness, whether you're just sitting there pondering on something, or maybe you're meditating, or maybe you're moving energy. But the mastery that you speak of and the way that you teach people is very unique and really powerful and instantaneous. Can you talk more to that to the audience?
Yeah. So normally I like to teach people during a 30-day online workshop, and it's interesting. As I see it, there's foundational practices. And once you get the foundation covered and you make a solid, secure, stable foundation, from there you can take lucid dreaming almost anywhere, towards accessing inner creativity, towards emotional healing, towards physical healing, towards engaging an inner awareness, what you might call your larger self, to learning how to manipulate energy within the lucid dream. And also you can use it for spiritual practices and more. So it's an open platform, but you have to have a stable foundation. You have to understand how to get into the state, and then how to stabilize the state, and then how to work with it. Because in many respects, lucid dreaming is not about control. Lucid dreaming is about more aware relating to the unconscious mind, to those unconscious energies. And when you start to think it's control, then you'll be stunned when you realize that there's occasions where you don't have control. And then you have to explain that to yourself. But in any case, it's extraordinarily deep. I hear from people all around the world who've read my books, and they've just had their mind blown just by going deeper and deeper into lucid dreaming and seeing how the techniques and the principles and all work for them, just like I've outlined in my books.
Yeah. I really resonate with an understanding of a sort of like pathway, a system that everyone should use. They should find their own system, whatever works for them to acquire a state of what we're calling right now consciousness, right? So the Taoist practices I've taught people for over 30 years, it starts with a baseline of going deep into the center of all the energy that flows through your physical body, past something that would be conceptual, being able to create it, palpate it. And then, of course, from that point, you can know when you're shifting your gears into different dimensions. How would you sort of define the measurement of this journey? Because I fundamentally agree 1000% how you've acquired this. It's like, okay, there needs to be a pathway, because people get this all the time. I have people coming to me all the time. I had a glimpse. I saw a spirit. I went to a church. I did it. And it's like really exciting for the first time to realize there's something greater than this 3D reality. And then they get lost in, oh, I found this psychic on Yelp, and they've got this system. And this is all good and well. I love this. But then there needs to be a repeatable experience. It's like, and what I think I find a lot of people have this ability to get a taste of something, but then they can't build on this foundation you speak of, which is so critically important, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, in the final chapter of my book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, I provide a technique that anyone can use to discover that this so-called perceived reality is in many ways a type of dream. And when I use the word dream, I'm talking about a creation of the mind, a creation of mental energy and the mind with a capital M. And I'll tell you what the technique is, just so that people and some of your listeners can begin to practice it. Because what lucid dreaming showed me was you have to look at the energy of your own thinking, your own beliefs, expectation, focus, and intent. All that becomes incredibly clear in the lucid dream state. And then if you're going to achieve lucid living, then you transfer those insights into the waking state and begin to play around with them. So here's the technique. I call it supersizing a neutral belief. So start to think of a neutral belief that you have about yourself. So it might be how funny you are. You know, you're not really funny, you're not unfunny, you're just neutral. You're just right there in the middle. You don't even think about it because it's not really a big deal for you. You don't think about it at all. That's what I call a neutral belief. Either the energies are balanced or there's just no attention put on it. It's just there in the background, neutral. So then what I ask people to do is that 10 times a day, for just 1 minute, I want them to focus on supersizing that belief. So you begin to tell yourself for 1 minute that you are the most hilarious person in America. You're the most hilarious person in your city. There's never been anyone funnier than you. When people see you, they begin laughing. When people hear you open your mouth, they just naturally laugh. And you tell yourself that for 1 minute. Imagine people laughing. Do that 10 times a day. I'll tell you, here's what will happen. Don't tell anyone you're doing this. This is an inner practice. You're energizing that belief. You're energizing that belief. And then by day 5 or maybe 6, all of a sudden you'll be at the checkout lane of the convenience store and you'll say something totally innocuous and people will scream with laughter. And you'll be somewhere else and something will happen and you'll say something just mundane and people will roar with laughter. So I remember teaching this. So this is a technique that I developed. I haven't read this technique anywhere. So I came up with this on my own by virtue of seeing what happens in a lucid dream. And I see what happens in a lucid dream is we project energy out there that we then have to relate to. And so that's what you discover in a lucid dream. But then I began to wonder, in the waking state, do I also project out energy? And by supersizing a neutral belief and seeing it reflected back to you, you realize that that's part of the mystery of this so-called perceived reality, is that it reflects back to us our own thought energy, our own beliefs and expectations. In my online workshops, I had a woman do this. She said she was 55 and decided that she was neutral about how attractive she was. She didn't even think about it anymore. When she was in her 20s and 30s, yeah, she thought about that kind of stuff. But now she's 55 and she's letting it go. She began to do it. She said on day 4, a guy in his 30s asked her for her phone number. She said no one had asked her for her phone number in 25 years. And she said she was so embarrassed that she had to stop the practice. Because again, when you begin to do this practice, you find a neutral belief, you supersize it, it gets expressed out there. And that's the nature of energy. And so you've got to begin to become lucid or aware of your own thinking process and realize what kind of energy you're creating. And when you see this demonstrated, then you know, okay, there's a reason why I need to look at my own internal thought processes in order to see what I'm helping to create out there.
That's brilliant, my friend. Just an overview, a little injection of perception from a Taoist perspective. It's understanding the separation between, or the stillness between, the breath in and the breath out. We call it Wu Ji. And when you enter that state, is how you speak on it. You can pretty much access anything instantaneously. And so this is sort of like fundamentally a parallel. I just love this because I interact with people and then they have these experiences and I can instantly relate and give them an insight of how we see things. And this is all just ancient stuff. It's all replicated in all different fields across the board. You'll have 1,000 ways up the mountain. But when I get to identify something as profound as your realization, and how you attuned to that and then was able to replicate it, it's the present moment is what it is. And that generally creates this instantaneous ability, but there's a pulpability that has to be acquired so that you validate it. It means, It kind of means nothing until, as Robert would say, is supercharging this moment. And so if it's a viewpoint, an opinion, whatever it is, everything is energy. You start with that foundation, and then you're literally magnetizing it and blowing it up, and it's being brought to you as if, you can't make this stuff up. It's like just the instant access to a conscious state engulfing all things. It's really quite profound.
I think one of the lucid dreams that I had before I developed this technique, I'll tell you what happened. So I became lucidly aware. I realized within a dream I was dreaming. And I looked around and I began to think, is all this just an energetic projection of me and my unconscious mind or my larger awareness? And so what I began to do in the lucid dream, if you can imagine, I began to use kind of Eastern tradition ideas of bringing the energy back into myself, back into my core. And I began to sweep the entire energy of the lucid dream back into myself. Then I woke up, and I think after that lucid dream, I had 3 more lucid dreams that night. And so it was like by capturing the energy of all the projections back into myself, then that elevated my awareness such that I was able to become lucidly aware, just on and on throughout the night. So again, this whole issue of energy is fundamentally important. What's a dream? And normally, if you go to a Buddhist dream yoga monastery for 3 years to enter that practice, from what I hear, is the first thing the monks begin to ask you or begin to say is, all this a dream? And I don't think they're meaning that all this is unimportant or fantasy or illusion necessarily. I think what they're all trying to get to is this thing that all this is activated by a creation of the mind, and it's filtered through your particular mindset. So again, lucid dreaming kind of gave me an insight into how things get created and also the nature of energy. And you see it expressed in a dream. It reflects back to you, your stuff. And in the waking world, it's much the same. We're projectors, and then we're also filters and interpreters. And so we have to take all that into account when we begin to explore the nature of things.
And, looking at that in that sense of energy, I think the foundational thing is we need to start with that. That's the fundamental understanding. Yet I can show someone who's a complete disbeliever or a skeptic instantaneously how everything is energy, and they kind of get a little freaked out. Like, whoa, hang on a second, but I didn't have any formation or idea of that, because you don't have to. It's like the architecture, the anatomy, the energetic anatomy is present, and it's been validated over thousands of years through multiple, belief systems. But you can instantly measure it without any sort of formal training or practice. And so the incredible insight that Robert's bringing to the table is that understanding. Now, once you sort of get into a groove of this, being able to echo or project whatever it is into what we would perceive as the field, the universe, quantum, whatever you call it, and it returns back to you with that understanding, and you're able to replicate it, that would come in the form of manifestation, magic, healing, whatever you want to call it. How do you, now you discover the lucid part, and it's very, very incredibly vivid. Like, my goodness, when I sample some of the energy in your field, it's like crazy. The density of the visual is on another level, my friend, another level altogether, which is nuts. You're building that up now. It's more an internal third eye thing as opposed to seeing it with your eyes open. Is that correct?
Well, here's what I would say that you learn as you get on the lucid dreaming path. So I started lucid dreaming as a teenager, and for me at the beginning it was all just fun and games. I mean, you can fly, you can go through walls, you can walk on water, you can just have all sorts of crazy fun. But as I started to go along, I began to see that it was a principled state. So things worked according to your belief and expectations. So if I believed that I could fly through this wall easily, I could fly through the wall easily. But if I was flying up to the wall and thought it was going to be difficult, sometimes I'd bounce off the wall, even though it was a dream wall made of dream stuff and made of basically mental energy. And so you begin to realize, okay, I got to work with my belief and expectations here. And then I realized, oh yeah, I also have to work with my focus and intent. And they were very important, because if you're not careful, when you become lucidly aware, your focus will just go to the routine interest of your waking mind. Whether it's romantic relationships or making money or whatever, you'll just go there because that's the contour of your mind. So I began to see that, okay, I need to become aware of those issues. But as I began to go along with that, what I began to see is that the mind helps to shape the experience. And so if you don't like your experience, then you have to change your mind. And so here'd be an example of energetically working with this and also moving it into the waking world. There was this guy who read my second book. He showed up in Seattle at a workshop I was doing. And he comes up and he says, "Your book changed my life." And I said, "Yeah, okay, well, that's great." And then his wife came up and said, No, really, your book totally changed his life. And I go, "Okay, tell me what happened." He said that he grew up in a totally dysfunctional family. They fought all the time. They were just, it was just rough. He said he had nightmares almost constantly as a kid. And he learned how to become lucidly aware in response to the nightmares. But basically, he had two paths. Either he would fight or he would flee in the lucid dream. So in the lucid dream, he'd fight the monsters, or in the lucid dream, he would run away and hide as well as he could. Even though he knew it was a dream, that was all that he came up with in terms of a response. And so he's reading my book. And in my book, I said, okay, you meet a monster and you're lucidly aware, send it what it lacks. So I gave the example of I met an angry dog, a Doberman that was growling and snarling at me. And I thought, wow, this is projected mental energy. So I began to send it love, compassion, understanding. And what's funny, in a lucid dream, an immediate response occurs. That angry dog begins to shrink down, and it shrank down into a little dachshund like I had when I was a kid. And so then I picked it up and we went flying around the lucid dream space. So here's what this guy began to do. He began to send love and compassion and understanding to all of the nightmarish figures. And they would begin to change. You know, sometimes they'd change into a kid who just wanted a hug, or they would change somehow. Then he said in all of his lucid dreams, he just began to send all of the dream figures love and compassion and understanding and acceptance. And he said, as he was doing this internally, suddenly he noticed his family was becoming non-dysfunctional. They were being nice to each other. They were caring about each other. They were showing love. And then at work, the coworkers who were always big jerks to him, now they were, you know, they would listen to him and go along with his ideas and get behind him as a team and all. And he said his entire life changed because he changed this inner activity, this inner energy that was going on in his head. And so that would be another way that people could use these ideas in a lucid living way. You don't have to be a lucid dreamer. When you're in a negative personal interaction with somebody, just send them love and compassion and understanding. Just sit there and listen to them and send them love and compassion and understanding. And I'll tell you what happens when you do that. Oftentimes the person will get kind of this bewildered thing, and then they'll apologize, or this bewildered look, and then they'll apologize for being so hard on you. And then basically, you know, they'll get to a level of neutral or relative neutral relatively quickly. So again, these are ways of playing with energy in the dream state. In the lucid dream state, you see it happen immediately. And then in the waking state, it takes a little bit longer because the waking state's a little bit slowed down. But those are some of the things that you learn as you get deeper into this area.
That's really profound, understanding that shift, because, you know, Robert's just validating everyone that has an experience and having them understand that you are the creator of your reality. And so this idea that you can shift it instantaneously is conceptual with most people. I tend to give people a deeper understanding, like Qigong, internal alchemy practices, create a multidimensional reality that is tangible. So you could literally play with an emotion and then go straight into being in a completely different state at the same time. And so this type of mastery that you're using the lucid aspect of your gateway, and it's so palpable. The interesting part is how do you use it in your life? How have you applied it? Because you did mention healing as a category. Can you elaborate on that more?
Right. So it was probably in the mid 80s. There was a magazine back then called Omni, and Stephen LaBerge, who was one of the scientists who was involved in the modern scientific era of lucid dreaming, he and Jane Gackenbach, another professor, they did a survey of lucid dreamers asking if they'd ever used it for physical healing. And so they received back 800 responses to the survey, and about, 20 or 30% of those reported physical healing, but they filtered through them, and they decided 7% of the total. It was easy to see that something happened in the lucid dream that then resulted in a healing. And so I became friends with someone, Ed Kellogg. He was one of the first people to do a kind of his own personal research on lucid dream healing. What happened to him, he was eating a shish kebab, and he poked his tonsil, which got infected. So he was vigorously eating a shish kebab, and it got infected. And so he dislikes going to doctors. So he noticed after a couple of days, he had red lines running down the side of his neck. His throat really hurt. He was in a lot of pain. And he still disliked the idea of going to a doctor. So he decided that night he was either going to have an out of body or a lucid dream and try to get this healed. And he became lucidly aware in a lucid dream. So he realized within a dream he was dreaming. And then he projected healing energy on his throat, announcing for it to be healed. He said when he woke up, it was like 80 or 90% of the pain was gone. Within a few hours, the red lines went away. And within like 6 or 8 hours, all the pain had gone away, and he was back to normal. So that's kind of where I first began to hear about this idea of healing in a lucid dream. In both of my books, I have chapters on people who have successfully used healing in the lucid dream state and woken up with dramatic changes. It's utterly fascinating to see. I think oftentimes, like when you think of deep hypnosis, sometimes people do profound things. They can stop bleeding, they can, birth children without any anesthetics because, they're in a deep state of hypnosis or whatever. And it's truly fascinating, but it's much the same, I believe, in lucid dreaming. When you get to this deep state, you're aware within that deep state, and now you intend for a healing to occur. Oftentimes the body responds, and it's truly incredible. In fact, I produced this online magazine along with my friend Lucy Gillis. She and I have done it for 20 years. A year ago, in our quarterly issue of the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine, that's for free, I interviewed this young guy, Jose Mateo. He had a traumatic brain injury. The doctors told him that there was nothing they could do, and in fact, he would probably be dead within a year. And for whatever reason, he had the thought that lucid dreaming was what would help him. And even though it was just, he learned how to lucid dream, he read my books, he read some other books, but he said in my books, he saw how you could use it for healing. And incredibly, he had a powerful lucid dream healing experience. And he said it was like someone pushed the reset button for his brain. He said he woke up and he was no longer in pain. He woke up and his sensory mechanisms were fully restored. And within a few months, he had a job again. And a few months after that, he had a girlfriend. And he said it was utterly fantastic. And so I interviewed him in the magazine 5 or 6 years later. But again, this just shows what's possible. But I also have a version of using this in the waking state without even becoming lucidly aware.
Excellent.
So I'll tell you, about 15 years ago, I realized that every August and September in this part of the States, I would have hay fever. And so, your nose is leaking, your sinuses are all full, your throat is all raw, and you're coughing, and it's just horrible. And so, but then I thought, well, wait a second, I just wrote a book on lucid dreaming and how great it is. And I thought, I'm gonna heal myself by virtue of using my mind. So this is what I did. I began to mindfully observe every time I began to think about hay fever, and also what a disaster August and September were. And so first I would mindfully observe it. Okay, had to become aware of it. Then the second thing I would do is I'd tell myself, no, not anymore. And then I had to tell myself where I wanted my unconscious mind to go. And so what I told my unconscious mind, which was 3, is now I breathe easily and naturally. From now on, I breathe easily and naturally. So every time I'd see a commercial about hay fever is coming, go grab these medicines, I'd say, wait a second. Nope, not anymore. From now on, I breathe easily and naturally. And I'll tell you, that first year, I had a 70% reduction in symptoms. Second year, 90%. Third year, 95% reduction of symptoms. Just basically had hardly any symptoms. And after that, I just breathe easily and naturally, so I no longer carry with me hay fever. I breathe easily and naturally. So again, this is a way of taking the ideas from lucid dreaming and bringing them into the waking world. I call it lucid living, and learning how to change your reality by changing your mind.
This is really quite something. So you've signaled hypnosis. You've signaled this sort of, there's this sort of state of change, whether you're in a deep epsilon state or a gamma, which is sort of like where I mostly function from. But what I've identified is this gamma frequency, 40 hertz and above. Normally I operate between 100 to 200. I've measured it up to 100, but I know intuitively I'm way above that. Now, that's a state of complete 100% consciousness from looking at the brain's function. And okay, we have the brainwave, and it correlates with things that I teach people for physical healing instantaneously. It's a state. So do you feel this when you're doing this? Do you feel this? Because when I shift into this state, I can get into it instantaneously. It's a practice method, just like your lucid dreaming, and you can shift things instantaneously within this reality. Have you thought about processing it that way, or have you had any dry runs with that? Because I think we both agree on the fact that this is all founded on your belief system and how much you really accept all these things.
Right. I have used my own path, and especially the path of dreaming, to discover things and learn things and all. It's interesting. Sometimes in a lucid dream, you'll see energy shoot out of the palm of your hand. Sometimes you'll feel the energy between your hands, and you can also during the waking state, on special occasions, like you mentioned, when you get into kind of a special state, have much the same experience. So part of lucid dreaming, I think, is becoming aware that these kind of things exist and they're just not imagination. And so I think part of the beauty of Taoism is helping people to continue with the practice and begin to explore and go deeper. I remember when I was a teenager, like a lot of teenagers, I was on my own kind of spiritual journey, and I came across the Tao Te Ching, and I thought, wow, this book is so incredible. I began to memorize it when I was, a young guy home over the college summer, working for the highway department. When I was bored, I would pull one of the pages of the Tao Te Ching out of my pocket and sit there and begin to memorize it. Because, whether it's a Taoist version of energy or a lucid dreamer's version of energy, you'll begin to realize that at certain points they're going to coincide, and people are going to learn the same principles. They might give them different terms. They might come from different traditions. That they might be expressed in their own unique way. But still, when you get it down to the level of energy, you're still working with basically what I'd say is much the same thing. So I haven't systematized it as much as the many thousand years experience of the Taoists, but I have found it quite interesting. I do want to interject, if you don't mind, a funny story.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Kansas, and so just not really familiar with everything out there. And I remember one time in a lucid dream, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, I become aware, and all of a sudden I see these two Asian guys all dressed up in black robes. And I'm lucidly aware and looked at them, and then I see one of them, the younger guy, his eyes get really big because he's surprised that I'm lucidly aware in the same space, and he nudges his partner, who is also in a black silk robe, and suddenly he's aware, and so all three of us were aware in this same space. And I woke up and I thought, black robes? Who the heck wears black robes? And so I have some friends who are in Chinese esoteric Buddhism, and I sent them a note and I said, who wears black robes? I last night in my lucid dream, I met these two guys in black silk robes, and they go, oh, those are Taoists. And I go, do Taoists practice lucid dreaming? And they go, oh, they have secret societies where they do OBEs and lucid dreams and things. But you'd never know about it unless you were, deeply into it and initiated. I mean, they would never tell the average person about it. And so that really surprised me to see these gentlemen and realize that the Taoist community at deeper levels into it actually have an interest in this area.
I think that's fantastic that you had that experience, because I mean, Taoism has sort of been fundamentally a secret, as I wouldn't call it a society, but a secret movement. And, you know, quite frankly, I'm sort of like revealing or taking back the veil, all the things I've been trained in as an ordained priest in 2 lineages of Taoism. Then I'm taking it further than that, because the highest level of ascension within Taoist practices, which is not commonly exposed, is the ability to channel direct source information, like the highest level. So you go through the rituals, you go through the magic formation and construction, and then there's levels of ascension, and you get to that highest state. Well, there is no limit, but let's just say it's a fundamental stepping stone of about 9 transformations. And then, you know, as you had mentioned, the Taoism stuff is far more secretive. Nothing is ever as it seems. It's like 2 steps left, 1 step right, go backwards, then go forwards. And so people aren't really too familiar with the inner alchemy. And, you know, the most contemporary offering would be what I see, knowing the deeper understanding of it, a bastardized version of the microcosmic orbit, would be someone's offering into Taoism. And I've yet to see one that is actually complete. And that's just part of the nature of Taoism. And, you know, over the years, recently, you know, the last sort of dictator that butchered millions of his, you know, citizens, eradicated Taoists from across the field of Chinese culture, because they were always the advisor to the emperors in the last 7 emperors of Chinese history had their Taoist advisor, because they had more of an insight into more esoteric practices and, you know, levels of consciousness, you know, clairvoyance, you know, mediumship, channeling, healing, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that with the audience, because I just pull the veil back. I'll teach you it all. And there is nothing that cannot be obtained within this sort of system. And I always tell people, listen, it's a system. There's a million ways up the mountain. There are no wrong ways. Resonate with what resonates with you. I will never, ever, the first thing that's most important, just like the charge you and I had right now, boom, that realization of that energy expansion. And people are like, how do you, well, I can see it. But that connection that you and I have, and that's just a level of what I've put under sensory perception. So clairvoyant sight is part of the yin development, yin eyes, we call it. And so, you know, you start to be able to see these things. And these are very normal functioning senses that once you acquire them and you activate this inner alchemy, the energy aspect of it, they're very palpable. And so I get really excited when I come across incredible people like yourself that have this insight and have really mastered their access to this level of consciousness. And that's why I just offered that ponder of an idea that maybe you wanted to expand on your own discovery, because you can literally do anything, as you've you know, affirmed. You can literally do anything once you start to do it. And the physical stuff is really no different. Like I always attribute all this stuff to, like, have you ever bent metal before?
Nope. You mean like spoon bending or something like
Yeah,
that?
like just
I've
like
never bothered with that. No.
Right there. Well, there's 3 degrees to this sort of understanding. It's like a shift of consciousness. First, you apply a little force and you focus your attention, intention on part that you want to bend. And then the second, you know, level of graduation is you hold the spoon and you melt it like butter before your eyes. And the third one is, oh, I've hit nirvana. You move the prongs of the fork either way, any way you want. And there's a fundamental state, and I've measured this many times. It's a gamma frequency, and this is how I see physical healing. So I'll see the flesh wiggle before my eyes and transmute back to its default state, no matter what it is, a cut, a wound, a broken bone, whatever. I've seen it all over 30 years, and people are like, what? It's no different. But you have to realize that from my experience and from the practices I teach people, the emotional state has to be removed. And people are like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I don't want you to erase your personality. You're given that as your journey within this lifetime. But once you come across people like Robert or myself, where you realize there's a fundamental access to high levels of consciousness, you can put your personality aside. And that's the distraction that makes it sort of fundamentally difficult to obtain this level of consciousness. Does that make sense to you, Robert?
Right. You know what I learned as I was going deeper into lucid dreaming, I began to be shown limiting beliefs that I had that were actually hindrances along the pathway. And so part of growing is actually letting go of things that are limiting you. And sometimes those are ideas, beliefs, expectations. Sometimes people have limited focus and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, letting go is definitely part of the process. And you just learn as you go along. Oftentimes, as you resolve issues, you would wake with new energy. And so, even psychotherapists and psychiatrists who use lucid dreaming in their practice, they've noted when some of their clients have had profound lucid dreams that they wake up with just dramatic new energy because they finally resolved one of the big blocks on their path, and now they have access to energy that was always there, but was denied them because of the energetic equation. So it's definitely interesting as you go along. You really get to see things in a new way.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the beautiful part. I want to evoke within anyone that's watching this podcast and listening to this incredible conversation to realize that this is just the beginning of your experience of what lays before you in the journey into who you really are. And I kind of get people sort of like more at an evidence-based sort of state that I need to show you something fundamental, something as benign as enveloping my arm in sort of like an anesthesia and then driving a needle through it, and people are like, holy moly, well, it's a state of consciousness, and then I pull it out, there's no blood, the whole thing. It's people are like, wow, that's kind of like David Blaine. Well, actually, David Blaine probably pulled that out from some ancient Qigong master that had been using it for a long time. It's just a way to shift your consciousness and go, hey, guess what? This happened before your very eyes. Now, what are you going to do with it? Now, how are you going to perceive your reality, or moreover, something more dramatic? I mean, you referenced hypnosis, and I think that's a great way. And people get kind of like this dirty sort of like association with hypnosis, like, well, if I'm hypnotized, I'm stupid. Actually, it's a really powerful way to identify how much you can focus instantaneously. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember as a young man, I went to a hypnotist to learn self-hypnosis. I was probably 17 years old. And what was beautiful about it, the more I began to practice the self-hypnotic practice, the more that pathway begins to get cleared out. And you could get to some really profound states, within 5 or 10 minutes. But you had to do the practice and keep going down that path until it was so familiar and so welcoming that you keep going deeper and deeper. But it is interesting. One thing that was a little bit curious to me as I went deeper into lucid dreaming, sometimes within the lucid dream, if you can imagine this, I would hear a voice say, trust, nothing to fear. Or sometimes in a lucid dream, I would see a banner in the sky that said, trust, nothing to fear. And so I began to realize that as you go deeper into lucid dreaming, you really had to let go of fears, because fear is, in many respects, the mind killer. It kind of keeps us contained in this one zone of exploration, and we think that's all there is. But when you begin to let go of fears, you begin to expand the environment that you're willing to explore. And I just kept every time in a lucid dream that I noticed a fear, I was on it. I was there to resolve it. I wasn't there to fight it or run away from it. I just kept trying to resolve fears. And as I resolve fears more and more and more, then you get to really a greater sense of balance and a greater sense of kind of trust in the nature of things. Because without that trust in the nature of things, you just don't have the sense of the sense of your ability to meet whatever challenge lies ahead of you. So you have to kind of adopt that. But again, letting go of things, limiting beliefs, letting go of fears, letting go of concerns and doubts. It all became part of the process as I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into lucid dreaming.
Now, would you parallel, like where someone goes, well, lucid dreaming is not out of body, OBE, sort of like astral projection? I would absolutely fundamentally disagree with that as an access point, because it's palpable and it is just another shift in your gearbox of your experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. There's unique states of consciousness, and there's phenomenological differences between them. So a lucid dream is you realize within a dream you're dreaming. If you have a car accident and you're floating above your body and watching the ambulance come and all, that is not really realizing within a dream you're dreaming. That's having a car accident and finding yourself floating above your lifeless body on the pavement. So again, they're similar in some respects. I tell most people, I say, a lucid dream to an out of body is like a house cat to a mountain lion. They're just two. They're from the same feline family, but they're distinct in their phenomenology. For example, an out of body might occur as you're trying to fall asleep, and all of a sudden you begin to hear this humming and buzzing and energy around your body. And then all of a sudden you realize you're seeing the bedroom from 6 feet above your bed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
nowhere in that do you realize within a dream you're dreaming. You just have this weird, strange experience, and now you're find yourself floating.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's similarities. Normally there's differences, but sometimes there's kind of this overlapping where you're not exactly sure. One time I recall I thought I was lucidly aware, interacting with a Native American man. I'd call him a shaman, who was teaching me. And this kept going and going and went on for about 10 minutes. And finally I said, boy, this is really a very stable lucid dream. And he goes, we are not in a lucid dream. And I thought, oh, crap. I just assumed we were in a lucid dream. I didn't realize within a dream I was dreaming. I became aware as I sat across from him, but I didn't realize within a dream I was dreaming. So sometimes there's phenomenological situations where you can't really tell, was that a OBE? Was that a lucid dream? What was that experience exactly? But there are differences that you can show in about 80% of the cases, but in about 20% of the cases, it's in that indeterminate zone.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just put in the category of sensory perception, and you are altering what it is that you're experiencing, because sort of like out of body, it's sort of like the Hollywood sexy starting point is, oh, I see myself, and then you get caught up in the cord that holds you between your physical and energetic body, and you want to look back, and it's sort of like these are the fundamental belief systems that need to be dissolved. And because, I mean, right now I'm experiencing what you would consider in the same category as a vivid or a lucid dream or out of body. Right now, my backdrop is the universe. I'm sampling all the energies of the sun, the stars, everything going on with my eyes open, but it's a mastery. Now, only other person I've come across other than people I teach was Tom Campbell, and he's very familiar with this sort of state. And it depends on how you develop that skill, but I always use the evidence base to validate what it is that I'm experiencing. And it all has to do with that sensory perception, that fundamental feeling that you're getting. It's like you move past the electromagnetic component and create a resonance that's beyond what we call this 3D reality. So that's sort of like how you sort of gauge this stuff. But then it comes back with bringing that evidence back in, creating that healing, creating that manifestation. And so you can absolutely fundamentally, from my experience, operate in all these dimensions at once. So I can absolutely understand how you could go, there's a 20% there on my experience. I'm not even sure what it is because you can just shift into all these different things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. As you were talking about, electromagnetic world and all, it reminded me of a workshop where I had a student from Australia, a college student, was one of the attendees. And so I asked her, what's your goal for this 30-day class? And she goes, I want to become an electron and feel what an electron feels. I go, really, that's your goal? And she goes, yeah, that's my goal. And so this young lady was already a pretty good lucid dreamer and all. But I told her, I go, look, you're asking for a conceptual experience that's beyond the norm. So you've got to let go of everything that you think it should be. And so it was interesting, in her first 4 lucid dreams where she sought to become an electron, it was still the process of letting go. Still the process of letting go. Still, there's still a barrier between her and the actual experience. And finally, in the 5th lucid dream, she told me that what she did was this. First, she announced that she was going to the subatomic level. So first she had to get into the neighborhood, and then she let go of all of her preconceptions and allowed herself to become an electron. And it was so fun to have her tell the class about what her experience was once she became an electron. And I'll never forget the one comment she said, that the most incredible thing was the amount of joy that an electron feels as it's being pulled to various things, repulsed from various energies, moving all over. She said the joy in it was so profound. And I said, so look around you in your living room or wherever you are, there's trillions upon trillions of electrons. Just imagine that all of them are experiencing that same joy right now. And so when you have those kind of experiences, but again, it's a practice of letting go of the preconceived ideas, the preconceived notion, if you really want to begin to touch the true nature of a hard to conceive experience. But when you get that, it's one of those things that'll probably be in her life experiences. That'll probably be in the top 5 for sure. Just having that moment of being an electron.
Well, it's like being able to register that and validate that, bring it to this conscious moment. It's like that's why the Taoist alchemy is so powerful, because you're able to make that present. You're able to use that, direct the energy however you want, become the master of your 50 trillion cells, and literally, with your eyes open, experience profound things that most people would have to induce with some type of external force outside of their own practice. And I mean, your development and your skill over your lifetime with this lucid dreaming mastery has only become more and more vivid for you when you obtain that and you're able to register it, and your information is gathering at the highest point thus far. I mean, the pulpability of the vivid images that you see are kind of crazy. Like, they just send chills. When I look at the images that you're accessing, it's like, man, there's nothing left to someone's imagination when Robert is exploring what he's doing, because it's like you toss out the digital processes. Any digital shot is not going to come close to the stuff that he can see.
I think one of the beautiful things for a lot of lucid dreamers, sometimes in lucid dreams, you learn words from foreign languages. Sometimes you'll have experiences that when you wake, you Google search them and you go, oh my God, I'm connecting with a 1,500-year-old experience. I remember one time I I became lucidly aware when I found myself looking through the eyes of a gentleman in a Japanese hut, probably from like 1,000 years ago, and I'm looking at this woman who's sitting cross-legged in front of me, about probably 8 feet away, and she's just crying, crying, crying. But behind her, I see the ghost of her dead mother. And so I'm having this thought: do I tell her that the ghost of her dead mother is behind her right now, or do I keep that to myself? And so I'm having the kind of this deliberation in my head. And so when I woke from this lucid dream, I thought, well, is that for real? Is that valid? And so I met a woman who had spent like 5 years in Japan, and I said, I had a strange lucid dream about Japan from 1,000 years ago. I want to ask you if this has any validity. She goes, okay, tell me the experience. So I told her the whole story, and she goes, okay, I have 2 questions for you. The woman who was crying, tell me about her shoes. And I said, oh yeah, she had these kind of like a moccasin kind of thing on. Okay, now tell me about the dead woman, the ghost. Tell me about her shoes. That's odd. She didn't have any shoes at all. In fact, I couldn't see her feet. Then she goes, okay, the hair of the woman who was alive, what was her hair like? And I said, oh, it was black, is all pulled back in a bun. Okay, tell me about her dead mother. What was her hair like? Oh yeah, her hair was all down around her face. And she goes, oh, well, from a Japanese perspective, you've just described a ghost. A ghost wears their hair, just all straggled around their face, and they have no feet. They're not connected to the physical realm anymore. But a living person, and so she said, so in Japanese art, you can tell who the ghosts are in the imagery because they're the feetless figures, and also they're the figures with their hair down. I then had another one, if you can imagine this. I was having this series of Japanese figures appearing in lucid dreams. And so there's one guy appeared, and what he did, there was a kind of a board in front of us, and he took his hand like this, and then he threw these black pebbles on the board. And he looked at the board really closely, and then he goes, your life is almost half over now, but I see no major health challenges. And then he had a maniacal laugh, and I woke up from the lucid dream. And so there again, I wondered, is this for real? Does this have any meaning? Finally, I met a woman who was like 5th or 6th generation Zen master from Japan. And I asked her, have you ever heard of this, of throwing black pebbles? And she goes, oh, ancient Shinto practice, only practiced in northern Japan now. How do you even know about this? And I said, in a lucid dream, these Japanese people were showing up, and one of them did this one time. So again, what I'm trying to get across here, as we're coming to the end, is that there is a way of confirming this, and that it's not just random stuff. It's just not, micro memories. I mean, nobody learns about ancient Shinto practices who grows up in the middle of America. I mean, that just doesn't happen. And so there are ways of confirming this and validating it so that you can move forward based on something greater than just it was a dream, or it was a lucid dream, or it was, a vivid imagination or whatever. But it's been a real joy to spend this time with you.
Well, yes, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience an insight into the mastery of lucid dreaming. And I'm always excited every day that I get to experience and talk with people that are, basically accessing what I define as consciousness to a level that they can change their reality in this 3D, which is really something that most people have been disconnected from for so long that they don't realize that it's always been the true nature of who they are. I would ask you in closing, what is your definition of consciousness?
Well, that's probably what we should have started this talk with instead of. But that's just too profound, and so I'm going to leave that for another talk sometime.
Okay, yeah, I would love to. I would love to have you on again in the near future. And in closing, I would love you to share with my audience what's going on with Robert today. What are you offering?
Yeah, I do online workshops. In fact, I'm doing one that's dedicated for children, helping children learn how to lucid dream. Because a lot of them, if they learn how to do it as a child, it's just like riding a bike. Then they always have that ability. And so that starts March 22nd in 2024 at Coherence Education. And but I continue to go down the path and try to wake up even more in this mental creation that I find myself in.
Well, I want to thank you again, Robert. I want to thank the audience for spending their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I will see you on the next one, guys.